Well, g'day everyone, welcome back to the channel. All right, nice simple one for you today. I am making some bone broth. Nice, healthy sort of thing for you. What I have here is some pork bones, which are left over from the course I've done. I've also got a pig's foot, nice and clean. The only marks on it is just from where the hook was on it. That is ideal because it is full of gelatinous material. So we're gonna put all of our bones into a pot. Get them sitting fairly flat. And we're just gonna cover them with cold water. Okay, this part's called blanching bones. It's not always called for in recipes. Just helps to get things like the blood that's still in there. Helps to get that out. Those sorts of proteins that are just going to float up. And that will help to clarify your bone broth when you're finished. So all we're going to do is go put this on the burner and we're going to bring it up to a simmer and then simmer it for about 20 minutes. So I will get that put on. We've had our simmer time. I actually got the temperature a bit high at one stage and you can see it was boiling a bit. You see that junk that's sitting up there, that's a lot of those impurities, also the cloudiness of the water. Again, that's the impurities that have come out. So now we're just going to drain these and rinse them. And then we're going to go into the oven. Okay, so there's our rinsed off bones. Just going to go on the baking trays with those. Spread them out. You don't want them over the top of each other. Now we're going to go into a reasonably hot oven, so about 200 centigrade or about 390 Fahrenheit. Going to go in there for about half hour. Then we're going to add some vegetables in. So we'll pop them into the oven and get the first part of the cook going. Half hour into the cook time, as you can see, we're starting to get some caramelization on them. Looking good. Give them all a flip over. We're just going to toss in some of my curly carrots. Couple of leeks and some garlic. Then roast up a little bit. All right, so I give this about another 20 minutes, half hour. Just want to start to get some caramelization happening on the vegetables. Meat and bones are looking pretty good. So we'll give it about another half hour and then we'll move on. Time to go to the cooking stage. I'm going to use the slow cooker for it. It's just the easiest way of doing it. You can go stock pots and that sort of deal. But in all reality, if I put it in the slow cooker, I don't have to play around with it. I can just turn it on and not worry about it. Now, what you'll see in here is I put the carrot tops in. That's adding a bit of vitamins. They're not going to get eaten anyway. But yeah, they're just going to add some vitamins and flavour to it. So making it nice and healthy. Here we go with that bones and vegetables. As you can see, that meat's dried off a bit. That's fine. It will moisten up as we go. Bit of caramelization on the veggies. That's a good thing. Get it in, you get it down reasonably flat. You need to season it up. I'm going to go with a bit of Chinese fire spice, which has got some pepper, it's got some cinnamon, some star anise, some clove, and some fennel seed. Gonna go in with some whole peppercorns as well. Wee little bit of salt. I don't want to over salt it. You know, I don't want to have a bone broth or stock that's too salty. Now we're just going to add enough water just so we cover everything up. All right, turn the heat onto that, put the lid on it, and we'll leave it alone. And you know, it's night time now. We'll have a look at it in the morning. Yeah, is there a better way to wake up in the morning than the smell of this permeating the house? That looks absolutely delicious. I'm actually going to leave it to cook most of the day. It's not going to hurt it cooking down a bit further. It's going to get a bit more nutrients out of the bones, out of the meat. So we shall leave it on for a few more hours. All right, folks, this ended up getting 48 hours in. 24 would have done it. 48's better. 12 would have done it. But again, the longer you cook it for, the more flavors can seep through. The more goodness can come out of the bones. And yeah, just turns that bit better. I had a ham to do last night, so that threw things into chaos, and I wouldn't have had a chance to get this done. So I decided to give it the 48 hours. All right, let's move on from here and start straining it out. Just going to start with the slot of the spoon. Some of the vegetables will be pretty soft after this amount of cooking time. So I'll go through and I'll remove all the vegetables and all of these gorgeous bones. As you can see, that's breaking apart the collagen that was in there, the tendons that were in there, that's all broken down. All right, there's the majority of our vegetables, our bones and everything out. Now, what you can do with this is make a dish called soup vegetables. Basically, you're just pulling all the meat. Oh, that's good. You're pulling all the meat off, using all the vegetables, and add a little bit of broth back into it, and you can have that as a dish. If you don't add the broth back in, spread it on some bread, delicious. You can also turn it into dog food. If you're going to turn it into dog food, I definitely take the onion part back out because cooked onions aren't good for the dogs. Don't feed the dogs the bones just by themselves. They've had a lot of the goodness cooked out of them. So if you're feeding the bones to the dogs, make sure to give them some of the broth with it to reintroduce some of that goodness back to it. Some of these bones are at that crumbly stage. You can see there, that's actually a bone, and that crumbles up. So yeah, a lot of the goodness has come out. Don't just give that to the dogs. So the next step after we've got those heavy solids, which is bones and vegetables and that out, is we want to get out all the little floaty bits and that sort of thing. So you can run it through just the colander by itself. You can run it through a double mesh colander like this one. This has got the coarse outer mesh. It's also got a very fine inner mesh. That one will work, but it's not going to get you super clear. So the next option is to run it through some cloth, ideally cheesecloth. I don't have any cheesecloths, so I'm using a tea towel. nice clean tea towel, and chances are it will stain it up. Put that layer of fat on top, which I'm going to try and avoid. But you can see how that's filtering out all those little semi-solid particles, the last little bits of carrot top that are in there. Now that I've strained it off, now it's sitting in lighter colour containers, how dense and flavour packed this bone broth actually is. With the straining, you do end up, as I said, with those little solids in there. Don't try and push them through to get every last drop of moisture out of it. If you try and push them through, you're going to get solids in there, and that's going to give you cloudiness in the broth. So you want to avoid doing that. The last step before we go on to canning is to get this fat off the top. You can see the little beading on there. There's a little fat layer on it that's broken up by going through the tea towel, through the colander, but it will amalgamate back together. I'm just going to leave it to cool on the bench. Once it's cooled down to room temperature on the bench, then we're going to go in the fridge with it. You could put it in the fridge straight away, but I've got a fridge full of curing meat at the moment, and I don't want to put a sudden temperature spike in the fridge, which putting this much hot liquid in there would do. So we'll just let it cool on the bench, and then I'll go in the fridge, let it sit for another 24 hours just so the fat can gel up. I could get to it tomorrow morning, but I got to go to the office tomorrow, so I'll let it sit until tomorrow night. Then we'll skim it off, and then we can start canning. Now, having sat in the fridge 24 hours, all the fat's set on it, and you can see there's a nice jelly-like consistency to it, which is just what we're after. That's what sets a bone broth apart from a stock, is having that jelly to it. So what we're going to do is scoop as much as the fat off as we can. And try and get it pretty clear. Once we've skimmed it to remove the majority of the fat that we can, you know, there's still some fine bits left behind. Not super worried about them. I've taken a lot of the bone broth out to get as much as I can out. I don't want to lose the whole lot by thinning it, by trying to get those last little bits out. So we're going into some pint jars. You can see that jelly nature of it, all wobbly. And I'm going to leave about 1 inch of headspace on them. Now we'll go through and can up the rest of it. Before I do that, I wanted to show you the lid technique, because I'm using my harvest guard lids on this one rather than using my standard metal pop-up lids. Okay, so put them on the sleek bench surface, and there's a reason for doing that. Nice clean piece of paper towel. Just dipped in some nice boiling hot water. And we'll clean the rims. Okay, for our harvest guard, we're going to take our seal. We're going to lay it over the top. As you can see, it's nice and soft and rubbery. I've heated it up beforehand just to get it there. So just using the fingers to hold that seal in place, flip it over and put it in place. Make sure it's centered. Okay, now using one of our rings, okay, we're just going to hold the lid with one finger. And you want to have it what you'd consider loose if you're doing the metal ones. If one finger's not holding it and it's spinning around, that's perfect. You'd normally be a little bit tighter with a metal pop top lid. So again, this one's already rinsed off. Put our rubber seal over the top. Hold that in place with the fingers. Straight down over the jar. Make sure it's central. Get our ring. Okay, one finger. As soon as it's spinning on one finger, that's tight enough. Okay, so I'll go through, get the rest of these canned up, and then we'll head across for the water bathing. All right, our water bath. As you can see, I've got a tea towel on the bottom. I just use the same pot for the water bath as I use for scalding the bones. It's my do everything pot. I don't have a trivet. I can make a trivet by tying some rings together, that sort of thing. It's just as easy to throw a tea towel in the bottom. So we're going to fill this up with cool water because we're using a cool product. We're going to bring that up to the boil, and then we're going to boil it for an hour. We want to get a solid hour of boiling because it is a semi-meat product. If it was actual meat in there, you need to boil it for about 3 hours continuously because there's no actual meat in there. It's just the broth in there. It's actually going to condense down into a liquid and boil inside the jars as it's cooking. So that's going to be absolutely fine with an hour of cook time. It is really hard to find some water bath times for doing stocks and that sort of thing. Some suggest the full 3 hours that it is for meat. Others say, half an hour. I'm going to be safe, run with an hour, and that should get us there. So here we go, our first jug of water. Once I got that first jug in there, I can put the heat on it. As long as you're not stopping at this point, you're continuing to fill, that's absolutely fine. It's going to start warming that water, warming the jars along with it. We got 2 inches of water above the top, up to here, well, maybe 1.5 inches. I prefer to have a little bit more water in there. That means I've got less worry about it boiling out. You want to keep, the easiest way to do it is a hot kettle next to it. That way if your water starts getting a bit low, you can add boiling water straight back in because you want to keep it on that boil. You want to keep it on the boil. You want to keep the lids underneath the water. You want to aim for 1 inch underneath the water, but obviously as it's boiling down, it gets a little lower. But yeah, you want to keep topping it up to try and keep maintaining at least that inch. All right, we need to cover this up. It needs to come to the boil. It needs to boil for an hour, and then we'll move it out and move on to the next step. there's our hour done up with the rolling boil. See, there's a nice boil going on it, so we can turn that heat off now. And I just want to let a little bit of the heat come down, let it cool for a bit. All right, folks, here we are a couple of days later. As you can see, we have a beautiful clear bone broth, looking absolutely gorgeous. Okay, now we just need to take the rings off. And as you can see, if you pull up, that lid is stuck on nice and tight. So really happy with the way these harvest guards went on the first use. Yeah, they work perfectly. So I'll go through, get all these with the lids off, and then they can go into storage. Now they should be good for about 12 months. Of course, with anything that your home can, you want to check it when you get it out. That's why we're taking the rings off. If that seal pops, then you don't use it. When you open it, check it by smell and make sure it's still smelling okay. Just, you know, be safe. All right, thank you very much everyone for watching, and bye for now.